Cool.
All right. Well, I've got Josh and Emily Hall. I've been really looking forward to the conversation with them for a while.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us on the Financial Pathway Podcast with Nate Skelly, where we discuss important financial questions and give you practical advice to guide you on your financial journey. If you enjoy the podcast, consider subscribing and leaving us a review. You can also follow the Financial Pathway page on Facebook for more helpful financial tips and videos.
So to try to figure this out, and so Josh is my brother Josh's wife's brother. So that would make you my brother's brother-in-law or my sister-in-law's brother. And then Emily, since you're married to Josh, that would make you my sister-in-law's sister-in-law or my brother's sister-in-law. I don't know. But anyway, we have a connection.
Yeah.
We're not quite related, but we're pretty close. And so we've talked before, and Josh and Emily were just down here in Tampa visiting Redemption not all that long ago. But you guys did something really, really cool, and that's what we want to talk about today. But before we do that, go ahead and give us a little bit of intro. Tell us about you, where you live, what you do.
Yep.
Yeah, so we're Josh and Emily. We live in Raleigh. I'm from Ohio.
I'm from Florida.
And kind of throughout our life, like throughout college, we met a friend who set us up. Emily's family had moved to Raleigh, so we moved to Raleigh in 2018. We got married in 2019, so we've been married for 5 years now. And I am in accounting, so I do tax, public accounting, CPA, all that stuff.
Really exciting.
Yeah, exciting stuff. So get into the weeds of numbers, look at thousands of tax returns every year.
Have you guys watched Parks and Rec?
Yeah.
I have not. He has.
I've been told by multiple people that I remind them of Ben, the accountant, and I'm not really sure how to take that. I feel a little bit attacked, but yes, I get that. Accounting's not the most attacked.
Yeah, usually not big personalities in accounting, so I think I kind of throw people off sometimes.
Yeah, you definitely do.
Yeah, to be fair, Josh, knowing you and the little bit that I've spent with you, you do not strike me as an accountant, so that's a good thing. You strike me as a normal person.
Right. Yeah. And then I work for a tech company, so I'm in their kind of HR, employee development, and I work remotely. So yeah, that's a little bit about us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Where in Florida, Emily? You said you're from Florida?
I grew up in Celebration. So it's the Disney town in Orlando.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I loved it.
That's an interesting place to grow up.
It was amazing. So it was built by Disney, but by the time we lived there, it was already sold. But yeah, it's like this picture perfect town. I loved it. It was great. So I lived there until college, went to the University of Florida, and then from there kind of left Florida. So
yeah. Do you guys have the Disney passes growing up? Like, were you at Disney a lot?
Oh my gosh. No, because all of my friends' parents worked for Disney. And so the rule when you work for Disney, like they were executives or whatever, is that you could bring in 3 people for free every year. So anytime or every day of the year, except for blackout dates. And so whenever we wanted to go, we would just call our friends' parents or my friends' parents, and birthday parties were at Disney. My high school senior prom was at Disney at Epcot, which was pretty amazing. All my friends, their high school jobs were like Disney princesses. That's one regret I have in life. I wish I were a Disney princess. I didn't realize how cool that was at the time. Everyone was just doing it. But yeah, it was fun. Lots of Disney.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, you're already making people envious, and I think with this topic of conversation that we're going on today, I have to like preface this, but like, folks, like dial down your enviousness. There's gonna be some cynicism of like, oh wow, amazing. We grew up in Disney, went to Disney for free, and now we're gonna talk about this trip you guys took. But you know, we're gonna bring things back down to reality here, I think. So here's the big thing. Here, our big topic of conversation. You guys took 9 months, right? And traveled the world, visited a lot of different countries, and I followed the journey somewhat on your social media page. I think it's absolutely amazing. But I think there's a lot of overlap with what you did and what I talk about on the podcast all the time, which is learning how to align your use of money with what's important to you. So let me start here. First of all, whose idea was this to go on a 9-month trip around the world? What was that like? How did that happen?
Yeah, it was definitely
It
my,
was definitely Josh's idea. Yeah.
yeah, Emily, you
I
often.
basically just showed up to the trip, which was
Yeah,
awesome.
you packed your bag, showed up. I had
Yeah.
everything planned out. It didn't like start as that. We went to Greece in 2022, just like a normal 10-day big, like our first big trip that we had done. Like Emily did missions for a while before we were married. I'd gone on a couple missions trips. She did missions for like a year and a half altogether, all at once. So she was gone. She traveled a lot. So I guess we would just have a general interest like in the world, right? And a curiosity in the world in that way. So we just did like a normal Greece trip in 2022. And then at that time we were both working pretty remotely. And I had like interest in real estate. So I had thought about like putting our house up for rent and then like, playing games in that way, to bring on more income. So essentially I was like, what if we.
Well, we were in Greece and I was
Yeah.
sad to leave. And then I was like, why didn't we stay here longer? We can work remotely. We should have stayed longer and just extended our trip. And then of course I say that to Josh. And then the next thing I know, he's like doing all this research, trying to plan like our whole lives.
Yeah. Well, then of course you're like, well, we can't like be away for that long. Also, we can't like afford to be away for
Yeah.
that long. We're not like wealthy by any means, just like normal people. And so but then I was like, well, maybe we could make it work. Like we have this house, we could actually put it up for rent. We could
Yeah.
use that money instead of like, saving it for a little bit to use it for something we'd love to do. So I kind of it didn't start out with a 9-month thing. It started out with like, let's go to Europe for a bit. And then when I really dug into all the amazing places to go in Europe, I was like, let's leave right after tax season and let's just like
This is gonna
stay.
take a long time.
Let's just like
essentially.
stay for as long as possible.
Yeah.
Which was May 1st through January 15th of the next year. So that's like 8.5, almost 9 months. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, so you have this spark, this idea, but it's not unique in the sense of like, oh, nobody's ever thought about taking a long extended trip. Plenty of people thought about it, but you actually did it. So take me from this is like, oh, this is an idea in my head to no, that it's going to work. Like, what did that look like to where you could get yourself to the point where you're like, no, I think we should go for it. This is not just a pipe dream. This can be a reality.
Yeah, it was just like a hobby. I guess I'm talking on this because this was kind of like my brain.
Yeah. This is what my brain was doing during this whole time. Just being silent.
So I'm weird, like I just, for fun, for a number of months, I just dove into every detail imaginable that you could think about for like financial detail, I guess, like what it would all cost and what we would all want to do. For a trip, just because I'm an accountant, right? So like I like spreadsheets. So I was just like, I like the details. So I was just diving into it all. And I was like, is this even possible? Like, what is there even to do? Like, what would we want to do? What would that cost us? What would transportation cost us? Like everything possible. And I dove into that and I was like, okay, what expenses could we cut out and what money would we bring in from rent? And like, where would we be in a net position doing that versus just like living our life? And I did that for like a month, just like in my free time. I just did that for a month or two. And then kind of got to the point where I was like, it's only going to cost like 7,000 or 8,000 net. And then I was like, well, worst case, like, let's say it costs double that. 15 grand. Well, we can afford for something that costs us 15 grand over 9 months, for something that's amazing. It's not like that crazy. And that's what we did. And that's what it cost us. So it cost us like 15 grand to do it net. What versus like what our life cost us back in the States for that.
Yeah, what
same
our
amount.
life costs usually, what our life with the trip costs, the comparison.
You're putting our house up for rent, not paying utilities. So those are both, you know, positive cash flow there. And then cutting out some expenses. So all positive cash
My gym
flow.
membership.
Yeah, her gym membership. And then, cause I
Some other
have a
things.
garage gym. And then like all the costs of our trip, the expenses coming against that was only like 15 grand at the end of it. And we kind of like, you know, I was hoping it would be less than that actually. So I was like, at the end, I was kind of bummed that it cost us that much, but I was still
I
like,
mean, that's amazing. Like, think about that. Like, if somebody came to you and said, "Hey, I will give you a trip from May to January. You'll go to all these at 15 grand." You're like, that is the steal of a lifetime. And right, for it to really that be the difference between your normal costs living in Raleigh, doing what you normally do, versus living abroad for 9 months. I mean, I think that's incredible.
Yeah.
yeah.
And we ended up going to how many countries? Like 20.
We went to, I mean, we went crazy. We stayed in places for only like 4 days at a time, and then would hop on a train. We did 21 countries.
Yeah. So it
Wow.
was amazing.
All right, so give me a little bit of an overview, like you don't have to necessarily like remember every single place you went to, but what were some of the highlights of places you went?
What do you think? What your favorite?
Our favorite for sure was Italy.
Mhm.
That is like lives up to all expectations. Like I really thought our generation, I don't know, everyone like wants to go to Italy and it's very hyped up and it was very adequately hyped. We loved it. The scenery was beautiful, the people are so kind, the culture was cool, and the food was amazing. And it was relatively inexpensive comparatively. So it was
Yeah,
fun because you really felt like you could like go all out. And it really wasn't that much for like even a nice dinner or something. But yeah, we loved Italy. We went all around. So we spent 3 weeks in Italy during the summer and then went back and did 3 weeks later on in the trip.
Mhm.
And yeah, that was one of my favorites. We love Switzerland.
Switzerland was amazing. Like I guess some of the top ones for us were like Spain, Switzerland, Italy. Those are like typical, like right. That's kind of everyone thinks like
Spain, yeah, the culture was awesome.
Spain's so fun.
Mhm.
Scottish
When you're staying at these countries, what are you doing for lodging? Is it just depend like what is that like?
Yeah, so we would switch. It just depended. So it was like basically either Airbnbs or hotels. So when we were in the UK, there's like a lot of bed and breakfast. So we did in Ireland. So we did do a pretty good amount of bed and breakfast in those areas. But otherwise it was like just Airbnbs or hotels.
Yeah. Travel, doing train with rental car, like what did you have to mix it up?
Yeah, between places, we would do trains or planes, but sometimes in a city, we would have a rental car because of things we wanted to see. Mhm.
Yeah.
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 What a lot of trains. I mean, it's so connected.
I think I drove in like most of the main big Europe countries. And so at some point or another,
Yeah.
and then the trains were our main point of connection. I mean, it's so, yeah, it's so easy. It's so awesome there, the trains.
Then what about packing, like stuff that you brought? Are you lugging suitcases
Oh my
everywhere? Are
gosh,
you
this was
backpacking?
literally the one regret of the trip. And I had one Josh too, but we had these huge suitcases, like basically as big as you can get, as a checked bag. They were 50 pounds each. And I had one and Joshua had one, and then we had our backpacks. But you think about Europe and it's like they have so many cobblestones and so many like stairs, not a lot of elevators, you know. It was so, I cannot believe we lugged around our suitcases for 9 months. Josh's wheel on his suitcase broke within like the first one. So he was dragging like 3 wheels. And then after like a couple days, I was like, my suitcase is just too heavy for me. So then he ended up carrying both of ours like the whole trip. So backpacks would have like big, hiking backpacks would have been smarter, but
Yeah, I think
We made it.
that's like the one big thing. If we're gonna do our trip again, we would probably pack less.
yeah.
And like, we had to pay for like baggage.
Clothes for every season and like, I don't know. Yeah, of course, like you need a lot of stuff for 9 months, but
Because like the times that we did fly, because we did fly like still a pretty decent bit. It's pretty cheap there when you're going from city to city. Like we'd had to pay baggage fees. So I was like, oh, we could have like packed less, saved the baggage fees money, and then just like bought
yeah, like
clothes like that fit each moment better.
Yeah.
But hindsight 20.
yeah, that was really the only thing that we're like, if we could do one thing differently about our trip, it was the luggage.
Yeah.
But it's not a big
Well,
thing.
presumably you were doing some work while you were there. You weren't necessarily just vacationing for 9 months. How did that work? I mean, you're remote, so are you on like a 9 to 5 schedule where you're like, oh man, we have to sync up with US time, so we're starting late in the day but working well into the night? Did you have any sort of flexibility around that? What was that like?
Yeah, so it was mainly dependent on Josh's because, as I mentioned, like I work for a global company, so people are working. I could have chosen any hours essentially, but because it was a little bit more of an exception for him to be remote for this long and he has US clients, we aligned our schedules with US time zones. So we would
Yeah.
start our day typically around like 1 or 2 p.m., which is around 8 a.m. in the US, depending on where we were. And then we would work until we needed to finish, but like 10 p.m. So we had our mornings to travel between places and explore, and then our afternoons and evenings we worked.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we would take, normal time off. Like we had some good benefits with our place. So we were able to take off like a, decent normal amount of time off during the year, just like we would have in the States, and use that in Europe. And then if we were in a place that like there was a ton to see, like maybe Rome or a city like that, where there's just so much to see, we would wake up at like 6 a.m.
Yeah,
And
or
we would-
earlier.
and we would explore from like 6 a.m. to 2, and then
Wow.
And then work. all
work,
day.
and then we do.
Yeah.
When I'm outside of tax season, like it's pretty normal, like 8-hour days for me, except for a few exceptions. So that's kind of nice. And you
Yeah.
were pretty consistently 8-hour days. So we're able to work with that in the summer. And yeah, it worked out like unbelievably well, actually. I was surprised.
Yeah, and like Wi-Fi was fine. That's one of the things you think about, like, oh, you have an important call, you need to join, and like you have to present and people have to hear you, and but it was fine. And we had hotspot too as a backup of like, if anything were to happen at our place with Wi-Fi, we could just use cellular data and it was fine. But
Yeah.
Yeah. What did you do for cell phone coverage for the time that you were out? Because you're going to all these different countries.
Yeah, like T-Mobile has a plan. I guess this is a plug for T-Mobile. They have
Shout out T-Mobile for
Yeah,
sponsoring this
T-Mobile.
episode.
They
Yeah.
had like, that was the plan I found that worked the best for us hopping in and out the most. And it was essentially like a certain amount of gigs of high speed data, that whatever. It was a pretty normal. We didn't have to do any of the SIM card stuff, which we could have, I guess. We just use our phones. It would go to slow data for like 10 days, the end of the month, usually, but we'd have phone call and
Yeah.
text just like normal. So
And we did bring like a few things, like we had portable monitors that helped us. We had 2 screens that we were working from. And so some of our work setup was pretty normal.
yeah, that was pretty normal.
Yeah.
I would look for hotels or Airbnbs that had reviews of good Wi-Fi, and then had like in the room, and there was like a table that looked like it could have us both working on it or something like that. So
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's great. And I ask these questions because I think these are the natural questions that people come up in people's minds about the logistics. Like, oh yeah, that sounds amazing. I'd love to do that. But what about this? What about this? What about this? Okay, here's a couple more. Laundry and groceries. Like you're staying in places for just a few days. Does it really make sense to run to the grocery store? You have to find a laundromat. Like, what was that like trying to get those things done?